Final Fantasy XIV has become one of the world's largest MMORPGs, and established numerous expansions that produce countless of character designs, concept art, and promotional illustrations, all collected in a near dozen of artbooks. Nevertheless, the game's release in 2010 was rough. Despite its big names like Akihiko Yoshida, known from Final Fantasy Tactics and character designs in the world of Ivalice, Yoshitaka Amano, known for his involvement in the Final Fantasy franchise, and Kazuya Takahashi, the artist that is now responsible for Final Fantasy XVI. They, and their peers, were responsible for the character design, concept art and full-blown illustrations of the original patch 1.0. In other words, this team created a template for the art style and overall scenery design for all future employees to expand on. And especially an emphasis on future employees, because this game was, in the words of Square Enix, an official financial failure. Nonetheless, 2013, the new director Yoshi P reinvented the wheel and relaunched the game as 2.0, entitled the fitting name A Realm Reborn. His mantra was to actively listen to the players, showing transparency and open communication lines between the creator and consumer. More on this in a bit. The art team expanded, big time. Many new peers flooded the scene, with some of them well established and others whose art career took root in this game. Of course, Akihiko was the core artist of the team. He illustrated a large quantity of the promotional and concept art. Nonetheless, even though he's great, in the artist's comments, he also jokes about his own shortcomings, one of which was this illustration. The composition looks pretty cool. Now look closely at the white mage and the overall perspective. Something just ain't right. Another interesting note was from Takashi. He said that he imagined this guy to be more like this big. Like we all know, this game included the job system, only slightly different. They added base classes, low-level precursors of the conventional job classes. Indeed, all the jobs that we know and love, such as warrior, white mage, black mage, and monk, were represented. The team did their best to create classes to truly visualize, feel, and play like the jobs we have experienced throughout the franchise. One just can't deny that the Dragoon's armor and jump ability was a perfect tribute to its class. This is one of the things that makes Final Fantasy XIV so appealing. The advantage to reuse huge amounts of content the Final Fantasy series had produced in the past. All of them were pulled out of the closet and redesigned to fit this new world. Indeed, this includes many of the classic summons, renamed as primals, such as Ifrit, Titan, and Bahamut. Furthermore, certain special events included battles against the series' classical enemies, such as Behemoth and the Summon Odin. Other enemies like trash encounters and iconic creepy Yoda wannabe known as the Tomberry were a perfect fit for the dungeons and world. Next to the original scenery content, nostalgic locations such as Final Fantasy III Crystal Tower were redesigned with new and familiar boss encounters that did their source material right. Needless to say, all of the content were packaged in the form of big patch updates, such as A Realm Awoken, Through the Maelstrom, Defenders of Eorzea, Dreams of Ice, and Before the Fall. All content patches provided additional promotional art, gear sets, and weapons. After 2 years, the success of the content patches gave the development team enough confidence to announce the first expansion. Patch 3.0, Heavensward, was released in 2015, and the story picks up with the player entering Ishgard, which had previously been closed off to outsiders. The amount of content of this new region is comparable to the base game. Therefore, it might come to no surprise that the team expanded by recruiting new members while keeping most of the big names in their ranks. Aside from Akihiko and Takahashi, names like Yusuke Mogi, who soon became the team lead of the art department, said in a later interview that he likes to preserve the painted feel of Akihiko's art style, without any form of photo bashing. Another rising art was Ayumi Namee. She became the character outfit designer of the main cast. The main features were the introduction of the new zones, with flying gameplay, expanding the scenery art, and 3 new job classes. Dark Knight, a tank that uses pain and suffering to feed his rage. Also, they wield a big-ass sword like Cloud. Astrologian, a healer that draws and manipulates cards to support his teammates. And Machinist, a long-range DPSer with a freaking gun. The expansion also included another playable race, the Aura. While most games have specific character and environmental designers, Final Fantasy XIV is so content-rich that most of the artists take up on multiple roles. To elaborate, an artist can be a character designer and a gear set designer, monster and weapon designer, or for example work on specific events and season outfits. Most of the time though, the workload is neatly divided in their own specialties, with especially the outfit and weapon designs being up for grabs for all beginner and veteran artists. This means that sketches and ideas from all artists were considered, but only the best concepts were further developed. Also, loading screen illustrations and promotional art are divided among the artists. Personally, what I like about the countdown art is that it includes so many artists and styles, that it really shows how many people work on a project like this. Artbooks only include roughly 15 to 20 or so artists in the comments, but there are way more. Indeed, like you can imagine, a lot of the art gets abandoned, and we as a player only see the final versions. Example given, in an interview, Tsukamoto stated that Alexander was originally given legs, but this idea was scratched. One of the artists stated that they asked him to be more bolder in his design than the previous game's art. Another artist was responsible for redesigning the story-driven characters. NPC characters such as Yustola and Transit got a new attire. One of the comments was that Transit was given a more rugged flair because his reappearance was quite dramatic. The artist who redesigned Creel exclaimed to had a lot of fun doing so, and took much inspiration from her Final Fantasy V White Mage appearance. The environmental artist stated that the amount they needed to produce was immense. The foreground, for example, took a lot of time with the intention to imagine a world where man and dragon had lived in harmony. The Warring Triad designs used Final Fantasy VI as a reference, adding Neurolinks and Far Eastern religious idealism. Like in all games' development cycles, there were many hiccups in the road. As a collective group, their designs were critically analyzed and peer-reviewed, which changed some of them midway through, such as the Pyramid, who got major revisions and was originally intended to be like a black void. Some of the important weapon sets were inspired by the dark classic aesthetics that would fit with Ishgard's overall tone. Heavensward had many big content patches during its 2-year run and established a strong base for a new expansion. Patch 4.0, Stormblood, hit the shelves in 2017. The new content focuses on liberating the city-state from the Guardian Empire. In addition, they added new features such as diving and a raid based on the World of Evilites. The newly announced jobs were Red Mage, a supporting DPSer with the power to use both black and white magic spells. A Samurai, a class that uses katanas to defeat their foe. And a Blue Mage, a job that can learn and use monster skills and spells. In the artist's words, the setting took inspirations from Chinese culture and movies, a theme that was already well represented and tough to expand on. They took inspiration from science fiction. Omega's final form, for example, took inspiration from Final Fantasy XIII's Ragnarok and a Buddha-based anime the artist was watching at the time. The team also took inspiration from Greek culture and of course the classical Final Fantasy games. They mentioned that there was a lot of designer freedom in this patch. This is also supplemented by the fact that they did an equipment contest. The artist noted that they loved the overwhelming amount of cape designs that were sent in. Throughout the patches, the big starting cities had a lot of people involved, because these were the main hubs from the start of your journey till the end game. And you guessed it, they had so much more experience on how the players liked their city streamlined. They placed all the important elements such as auction houses and story quests way closer to each other. Some cities even had mount support to make traversing easier. In all fairness, the scenery artist mentioned that the workload was overwhelming and came with a ton of stress, because it was so easy to mess up and every mistake was cumbersome to be changed. The concept artists and 3D modelers need a tight communication to keep designs convincing and practical in the game's graphical limitations. Also, the artist exclaimed that it's important to make the map memorable and enjoyable for the player. And yes, that is essential. Because just like many other MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV contains quite the fetch quests. And I hate them. To summarize the artist's comments a bit, the team noted that they were grateful for the 3D artists to implement their ideas, especially because this was the second expansion, and the artists tried to really amp up the detail. They mentioned that even though they were going overboard themselves in this regard, the fan designs in the gear design contest were so ambitious that their designs weren't possible to implement. In the art book, they dedicated a whole section on outfit designs. More on this in a bit. Stormblood's overall theme was influenced by Japan and Central Asian cultures. In the developer's own words, Samurai's and Swords theme. Furthermore, the artifact armors were inspired by the originals from A Realm Reborn. A concept that I love about Final Fantasy XIV. It sticks to its core designs, which, through expansions, the majority of MMOs tend to lose. This also counts for the openness of redesigning original content from their mainline games. This can be bosses, dungeons, events. Does this make the work easier? Actually, after reading all the art books, most mention this is another layer of challenge, as new original content is not to be underestimated. More often than not, the artists feel this can be limiting and state they need to do a lot of redesigns to keep their peers happy. One of the reasons is that they try to keep respect to the original source material. Moreover, they want to give us, the players, the best experience possible while we still feel nostalgic. Like I mentioned before, the art team also put an emphasis on how to design clothes in the Eastern Memory art book by character concept artist Ayumi Namae, and she explained that she first asked herself questions like, how does this outfit fit in the story? And is it memorable and iconic? With of course emphasis on does it feel original and inventive, with the last point mainly aiming on the also popular isekai feel, meaning a different world. And believe it or not, the real-life constrictions such as religion and cultural connotation are conclusive for the final pass. The basic design pathway, however, is first rough sketches, discussion with the producer Yoshi P, selection process for the best drawings, work them out in concept art, a rough test implementation on 3D models, discussion on the exact approach of contouring, modeling, and the limitations of the graphics. This last part is especially important, as almost all the gear can be worn separately and they must be modeled in a way that clipping won't occur. This counts for both males and females in all races, adding another layer of work, so to say. Nonetheless, the final touches on the designs before implementation into the virtual world always needs extra peer revisions. Indeed, this is a whole other layer of depth in the process, such as creating formal and casual gear sets that are character, status, job, and situation specific. Naturally, the whole artist skill set like style, functionality, color choice, and appeal play an essential part as well. For instance, there's quite a lot of meaning behind the accessory design of Eorzea, where her status is represented by her insignia, seductive personality hinted with her powder box, and the meaning of her nickname, Naidu, which is incorporated in her overall attire. The team mentioned that they sometimes can be fully absorbed in details like that, geek out so to say. In 2019, the game's third expansion pack, Patch 5.0, Shadowbringers, was released and takes the players to a new dimension. The protagonists are tasked with restoring darkness to a world drowning in light. as they adopt the mantle of Warrior of Darkness. Features include brand new zones and 2 new jobs, such as Gunbreaker, Squall Lionheart's personal apprentice, and Dancer, a ranged DPSer that also has some support skills. This expansion debuts 2 new playable races as well, Viera, as seen in the World of Ivalice, and Hrothgar, which are based on Ronso from Final Fantasy X. As a bonus, they designed a whole raid around Nier Automata. Actually, Namae was responsible for the Yora set. She noted that she felt a lot of pressure to satisfy the Nier fans, and thus stick to the original designs as much as possible. Nonetheless, the workload felt immense, and especially because the male and female sets were quite distinct for each job class. In this patch, most of the members of the art team indicated that it felt like walking on eggshells. Wait, one of them actually said needles. This was not because it wasn't fun, but mainly because there was a lot of pressure to make something original from the now well-established world. Think about outfit, monster and weapon designs, all of which are put under the loop. The developers mentioned that they wanted to go for the full-on fantasy look. Gems, feathers, basically adding as much movable objects on the clothes as possible. Because this was a new world, the environmental design was the bulk of the work. Unlike all that came before, new, different yet familiar was the mantra. To achieve this, the team mentioned that they needed to step out of their comfort zone, which felt like a daunting task at first. Only after a while, they slowly fell in love with it, and could call this world their own. Now, many artists worked on different parts, but a theme based around mystery, primal roots and discovery were definitely the focus. The environmental artists want to give the player a journey in this dark, gloomy world that they needed to save from the brink of destruction. Also, one of the team members stated that the design philosophy of the story-driven NPC characters was to make them like true protagonists, which is probably why they all look so unique in their own way. A little fun fact. Some of the artists mentioned in their interview that they do check social media accounts. Some post their own illustrations, and others check fan art on their creations. Like you could imagine, all of them basically come to the common conclusion that it's inspiring to see other people enjoying their artwork and creating their own versions of them. To add on, most artists actually play the game themselves and love to walk around the cities to see what type of uniforms and gear are possible. This accounts for any form of item, which to their creators are deemed as special. Indeed, aside from clothing, this includes details on weapons, design of new minions, and even food and drinks to restore your health and magic. In the latter case, quite a few of the consumables are based on favorite dishes of the artist. One thing Final Fantasy XIV does extremely well is that they design so many gear pieces that you as a player can combine to stylize into any outfit you want. Yes, this means all the new gear are still relevant as they can be worn on top of the battle armor. Personally, I think this concept is an excellent addition for MMOs. I don't know about you, but I'm the type of guy that likes to show the typical class outfits for my main role. In this case, the White Mage, with the Tyrus as my main relic weapon. This type of behavior is also a thing that artists notice throughout the artbooks. They look at player character photos to expand on new ideas, styles and dress options. Actually, I read in some dead forum that players promote gear this way as well, in the hope to sell more in the auction house. Anyways, it's clear that the team expresses this active engagement and observation through different media, all to fulfill their own roles as much as possible. A healthy side effect is that this creates a relationship and great positive feedback loop between the players and creators. A thing that's normally only seen in indie games and not so much in AAA. So like all expansions before, they delivered 5 content patches in the span of 2 years. Exactly. They were in full progress at the start of the COVID pandemic. That hit us all in 2020. Many of the artists exclaimed it felt weird and difficult to work from home, especially because most of the home offices weren't arranged for full day activities. More importantly, Their routine from going to work, social interactions and exercise felt a bit messed up. That said, some of their peers mentioned that their deadlines did help them to adjust and somewhat stick to a schedule. Like last time, they did a geared contest, which inspired for many new armor sets. With the team mentioning they couldn't thank the players enough for their contribution. As for some trivia, the diamond weapon was inspired by a manga whose main characters made meals out of the monsters they killed. The artist never stated if this was based on Monster Hunter, but I found this explicit notion quite interesting to say the least. Also, some team members mentioned they get all types of ideas from experience throughout their life, even childhood memories. For example, one of the scenes contained an antique wheelchair, which resembled a model one of the artists used during a foot injury. Or for example, putting little birds in crocodile mouths, or adding a Chocobo Paradise image on an apron. These type of Easter eggs and signatures are added in the hope so the players might find it. To paraphrase their intentions, we hope our playful designs excite the players as well. The fourth expansion, patch 6.0, Endwalker, was delayed from its traditional summer release window to winter 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Players travel to the Near Eastern nation and take the fight into the heart of the Guardian Empire. This expansion features 2 new jobs, including a sage, a healer that uses funnels similar to a Gundam, and a Reaper, a DPSer that wields a scythe and uses souls to dish out damage. Previously the Valyara were only available as a female exclusive race, but now they added the slightly shorter male counterparts in as well. Because it was during COVID, the dev team had to work home. And to make it worse, some of the heat waves during summer were the most extreme as of yet. Some of them mentioned that they couldn't cool down their office room and said it affected their art, joking that their designs are more fired up than normal. Also, due to COVID, the remote work communication lines were way less responsive, with many delayed feedback from peers. Normally, you sit in a room and check the art together in meetings or walk past the desk for a quick adjustment. Now, everyone was in another routine that worked best for their own progress. And as for the overall designs, the devs noted that they tried to convey mystical lure, add more background, include additional purpose to objects, and increase the overall detail. Weapons such as the Abel's Lance was designed to look like the head of a dragon, with the thin curved pieces resembling its whiskers. Mare Elementorum was built by a high technological civilization, based and inspired on Final Fantasy IV's Red Moon and retro-futuristic images. The Disciples of Hand have tailor-made clothes that fit each character's needs and utility, but also kept style in mind. Yoshimi, an artist who worked on the Pedaka attire and was one of the many people that worked on the city of Rats at Han, noted that they tried to make that attire light, and that they insisted to have the fabric contain gold elements. A rich and spicy display, which looks good on itself, but also was designed to stood out in the fancy backdrop of the endgame's metropolis city. Basically, they went quite far. One of the reasons is, through all these expansions, there have been a lot of new blood in the art team. Young artists that grew up with playing games from big companies, such as Square Enix, and for example Capcom, doodled their favorite characters during class. In the recent years, this new wave starts to refill the art team. Therefore, it's more common that some of the OGs that made a name for themselves go freelance. This is by all means a good thing. When I read the new recruits their comments, they are always so humble and thankful that they can now inspire new players. Of course, as you can imagine, this also brings a lot of pressure on their shoulders, especially because they are surrounded by peers, who are like giants in their field. One mentioned it was inspiring to meet Yoshitaka Amano and see his work up close. Another said that he was so glad that he could redesign his favorite boss encounter. However, there's also a bit of a sad notion to this. They have to face the fact that their job spots are in crazy high demand as well. And we all know that the Japanese work culture works freaking hard already. So it's no wonder that through the art books, many artists end their comments with, "I hope to see you in the next installment," or I'm so glad I got the chance to draw for a second time. Personally, when I read this the first time, I found it like normal and didn't think much of it. Nonetheless, art business, like many others, is brutal. Also, it's common in Japanese companies to leave out the names of the artists who worked on the projects. Maybe somewhere at the end credits of the game, but not necessarily in the freaking artbook. These spots are reserved. Sadly, it's true that even big names get omitted, especially if they don't work for the company anymore. Reasons such as royalty and company content rights come to mind. Also, in Japan it was normal to make a lifelong commitment, and if you go freelance you walk away from the company that owns your work. That said, the Final Fantasy XIV artists do mention they made quite some mistakes and suggestions that got flat out rejected. However, one of them mentioned that his gear set was brought back to life again after a developer just screened through the rejects, and I'm pretty sure that he at least could sleep well for that night. I'm fantasy light novel author GP Phillips, and I must say the comments in the art books can be funny and a bit random sometimes. Statements like, I switched from drinking coffee to milk tea, and which type of food they now like to eat as their favorite dish, are all quite common in the ever so little space they get.